Good evening, everyone. If I can have a thumbs up from our members who are, yep, oh, fine, okay. Right. Right, I think we're just waiting for, we're live, okay, thank you. Okay, good evening, members, officers, and any members of the public joining us. This is obviously the executive meeting of the 19th of October. I'm sure everyone is aware of the tragedy that happened, that befell Sir David Amies MP and his family recently. A long-standing, highly respected politician who was murdered while serving his constituents. He became a local councillor in 1982 and then an MP in 1983, and he served a total of 24 years as MP. So I would like to ask you to stand to join me in a minute's silence in respect of a life dedicated to public service and for his family, close colleagues, and the community he loyally served. Thank you. Okay, we'll formally begin the meeting. Do we have apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Colin Dugan and Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans have sent their apologies.
Thank you. Okay, members, are you happy for me to sign the minutes from the last meeting? Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? Any of the items that we're going to be discussing this evening? That includes any members who are zooming in online. Okay, I don't see anyone. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions by members for myself as leader or any portfolio holders? Okay, no, all right, thank you. Okay, so our first item is our 5-year strategy, 2022 to 2027. Okay, this is, I'd like to introduce this. So, members, the council has to generate a 5-year strategy, and obviously we're coming to the end of our last 5-year strategy. Mr. Roberts and the officers have been working hard, as have a number of members, including the cross-party members on the 5-year strategy working group. And what I particularly want to just commend to you is that there was a recognition that we could do a lot better at consulting with our residents. And the goal was to dramatically increase our consultation. To that end, the officers did the usual channels of website and normal postings, but on top of that, I have to say, and I'm not an expert on social media, but it seems to me that every possible method of getting out to talk to people, talk to our residents was taken care of. I think we obviously did Facebook, we did Twitter, we did Instagram. We went out in person. We did long questionnaires. We did short questionnaires so that people felt comfortable with whatever it was. And we recorded and noted every single comment that came in, no matter how it came in. And that has all fed into this 5-year strategy. Now, there were some very, very significant things that came out, things that we are seeing trends that are simply getting stronger, and there's some new things that have come out. In particular, the two top items that came out were that the residents felt strongly that everything that can be done should be done to keep the borough safe. I think it's recognised that this is one of the lowest crime boroughs in the country. People appreciate that, but of course they want to make sure that we maintain that. A very, very close second, and I guess this is probably no surprise to anyone in this chamber or watching, that the environment was the number 2. And that was very much a mixture of carbon footprint, reduction of our emissions, everything to do with electric vehicles, charging points, changing to low power, LEDs, etc., and also protection of our green spaces, so our parks, our green belts, etc. And on top of that, we decided that, taking that into account, we would look to put in as specific targets as we possibly could. Not every single target can be specific, but we tried to make every single target that we could as specific as possible. So we tried to reduce the number of times when we said we would work with colleagues to achieve, and we tried to make it that we would achieve X by Y. And there's times on as many targets as possible. There are specific that are measurable, and it can now be regarded, in my view, as probably the strongest plan, 5-year strategy we've ever had. Some of the targets are new. Within this plan, you will see that there is a target to produce, to build 49 socially rented housing. Now, what my parents used to call council houses. Right? But we have a target. We have decided as a council, should we adopt this strategy, we are deciding that we would decide that that our residents require socially rented housing. There isn't enough of it being built within the borough, and we feel that that's something that we should take on. We would do it through a joint venture, and we would look to facilitate that and have expertise do that. And at the end, that become high quality socially rented housing. We also have in there a specific target to reduce this council's carbon emission footprint, if that's the correct term, carbon footprint, by 70%. Now, we, as you know, have a target that we declared a climate emergency. We have, I think from memory, 60 targets brought and agreed by this council from the climate change working group. And frankly, if we're going to achieve our target of being carbon neutral by 2030, 9 years from now, then we have to be at least 70% through that target by 5 years from now. So I'm very, very happy that this plan is robust, it's deliverable, it stretches us, and probably most importantly, it reflects, as far as any plan ever has in this council, it reflects what the majority of our residents want us to achieve. So I'm happy to recommend it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And I think I would agree that this plan is certainly an improvement on many previous plans that I've seen. It's certainly correct that there are a number of clearer targets, and the whole point of this is to be able to say whether a council is doing what it said it would do, and to be accountable for that. I just have a few relatively minor points. The first one is just to flag up that whilst there was indeed a very good consultation response in terms of numbers. There was sadly one group or two groups in fact, which as far as I can tell did not actually respond, or certainly didn't respond to the numbers as representative in the borough. The first group of that is those who are aged under 24. In fact, we only had 13 responses. It's possible we may have had a few more because of people who didn't put their age, but there's only 13 people aged under 24 who have stated that is their demographic. And whilst all the other numbers are great, and certainly I commend all involved for that, that is just a gap that we just need to be mindful of as a council. And I accept that doesn't mean that we need to change things, but it does mean to say that we just need to youth-proof all future policies and procedures as they go through. And maybe a learning point for us is just around school engagement and things like that going forward, just to make sure we get this right. I don't think there's anything in here to which young people, I used to be a youth leader, as some of you know, would find particularly upsetting, but nonetheless, their views are equally as important as every other resident in this borough, and we want to make sure that they're heard. And similarly, as far as I could tell, and looking at ethnicity, we didn't get anybody from the Gypsy, Roma or Traveller community, which is not the greatest surprise. They are a difficult group to have confidence engaging with, but nonetheless, there's just a gap there that we just need to recognise going forward about having their views. Nonetheless, there was a lot of people who did respond, and that's good and pleasing to see. There's one target only that I think is poorly worded, which I'm just going to say, you can change it or not as you see fit, but that is on page 58. And I will use the words, and then you can kind of try and, if you're an average Old Dean resident, work out what is said here. But use education and best practice sharing to drive significant behavioural changes within Surrey Heath to encourage the adoption of more sustainable lifestyle choices. And if I was to go to Old Dean community in whatever 2 or 3 years' time and say, has the council achieved that? I don't think we'd be able to tell. So I would perhaps encourage that the wording on that specific one is looked at. But I have to say, the vast majority of these are well worded, and I think are certainly a lot clearer than before. There's 2 other comments I just wanted to quickly make. One is that on the improving health and wellbeing section, there's one, the last 2 bullet points there are something which has already been commented upon by people. I'm sure others have heard this as well. The one is regarding the cost to people of the leisure centre, which in the view of some is too high. And then immediately underneath that, ironically, is what we're trying to address as a council around obesity. Now, those are linked. So if it is the case, as has been reported anecdotally, that people are put off due to the cost of swimming at the arena, inevitably that's going to not address obesity. So I think that's not one for the plan, but is something that we just need to be mindful of, again, going forward. And the final thing is a parochial thing, but I couldn't see anything in here that relates to the licensing function of this borough. Now, I appreciate you can't cover every section. Obviously, as the licensing chair, I just want to flag up the importance of that, but just that there wasn't anything in there that I could see about it. But that doesn't mean to say it's not important, and is a statutory function and will remain so. And I'm sure the council over the next 5 years, whoever that is going to be, will ensure that that is properly and adequately funded going forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. You mentioned things like the cost of the arena, etc., which you're right is kind of outside the scope of the plan. I can't say that licensing came up an awful lot of times during all of the conversations, but I think that probably reflects on how well the licensing department and the committee actually works. We couldn't think of anything that would actually improve it. So, the chair of that committee is to be commended. What I would just say, your first point about the, let's say, somewhat vague wording of that item, I wonder if it's possible if I could ask you just to think about that, Mr. Robertson, and look at that, and then just come back to us. I'm talking about in real time, right? Now, just take a minute just to look at it and just to see if you are if you think that what Councillor Bates, the points he made were valid, and is there anything that could sharpen up that particular item? Okay. You know the one that he's
on page
mentioned?
58.
It was page 58, wasn't it?
Oh, there it is, yes.
Okay. Right. Okay. While Mr. Roberts is doing that, thank you, Councillor Bates. Are there any other questions on the 5-year plan strategy? Okay. Councillor Wheeler, and then Councillor Malvaginam, and then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I think you said me first, but then you said me again.
Oh,
Which
sorry,
where do you want to go?
Well, let's do ladies first. I'm sorry, Councillor Wheeler. Let's do Councillor Wheeler first.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then,
You did say.
sorry, I should have said Councillor Tapper, but let's do Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I would just like to make comment really around the environment, which I'm sure won't surprise anybody. We had an excellent response from Chobham and Windlesham, and in fact, if you join those two villages together, they managed to respond more than any other particular ward. I appreciate that some of Windlesham theoretically counts as Bagshot, Councillor White, before you correct me on it. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that we make comment on the environment, and we say that one of the things that we're going to do is to acknowledge the concerns and to lobby central government. To my knowledge, we've written once to the previous housing minister, from which we haven't had the courtesy of a reply. I understand there's been some changes there, and as far as I'm aware, we haven't yet rewritten to the new Minister of Housing that would be able to talk to us about our housing target. We also don't make any specific reference to the importance. We talk about biodiversity and enhancing biodiversity, but at no point do we make a specific reference to the triple SIs at Barossa Common and Chobham Common, other than in passing. And if we look at the importance of things for our residents, the environment is very largely the largest, is the longest line, and has had the most responses. So I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that that isn't stronger within this report, and that we're not putting greater emphasis on the protection of those areas, other than including a biodiversity strategy. I am also hoping, because it was promised previously, that we will have published all of the comments that were made by all of the residents, so that we can have access of it to them and to review those as well. So if I could have assurance, please, that we are going to effectively lobby, which is more than a single letter, for a reduction potentially in our housing targets, and also that we are going to see all of the comments that were made, the free text comments that were made, and to have those published, please, as previously promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just taking those. You're right. We did send off a housing letter to the minister, and he was obviously too busy to reply. And then he changed jobs, I guess, so there's not much chance of getting a reply from him. I'm more than happy to write to the new Minister for Housing with exactly the same thing. But you're right, Councillor Wheeler, the point of the plan and the strategy is, of course, to lend more emphasis to what it is we want to do. And this chamber takes the environment and our climate emergency very seriously. And I do expect us to do an awful lot more lobbying, not just of the minister, but actually of perhaps the rest of the ministers. The plan with biodiversity, the environment, the plan is always, as Councillor Bates pointed out, there's always going to be things that are not mentioned. And it's possible that that could then be taken that, oh, well, it's not important enough to make it in. It was actually more that it was about, you can't refer to absolutely everything. This plan breaks down into annual plans, and the annual plans are far, far more detailed than this. And I would expect things like biodiversity and the other areas that we want to protect to be included in those. And I can assure you that all of the comments will be published. I'm guessing that it hasn't been done yet because we want to make sure that there's no ability to identify the individual. thereby getting us into, I guess, GDPR kind of territory. But as soon as the comments are all anonymous, I'd see no reason why they wouldn't be published to all members. Okay. Yes, Councillor Tapper, who I mistook for Councillor Wheeler just a few minutes ago.
Yes, we're often mistaken for one another.
Yeah.
Yes, there was something which struck something of a discord with me. Page 70, under the section Aspirations for Our Community, right in the middle of the page, it says, ensuring that the bus services across the whole of the borough are efficient and sustainable. And it lists our partners as being Surrey County Council and the local bus operators. I was somewhat surprised to see absolutely no mention whatsoever in there about and ensuring that the bus services provide an adequate service to the community, particularly as we are trying to emphasise the need for our residents to desert their private cars and use public transport for travelling around the borough. I think you will probably agree that certainly in certain areas, and in fact probably the majority of Surrey Heath, the bus service provided currently by the bus operators is fairly appalling. I do not consider a bus every hour to be an adequate service for residents, and it's certainly one of the primary reasons why our residents continue to use their cars rather than public transport. Could we please add something in there to make some sort of commitment that we can do whatever we can to encourage the local bus operators and Surrey County Council to ensure that franchises do guarantee a sufficient service to our residents and our communities in order to meet our climate change objectives? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Tapper. I actually agree with that. I think it's a good point. I think that there's always a tension between running buses, as you say, running buses every hour, and how attractive is that to change to public transport when it's only 1 an hour. On the other hand, the buses are run by a company that's expert in it and is looking to make a profit. And I'm not sure that running buses every half hour that were empty would be either green or profitable. But then would the running every half hour, every 20 minutes encourage more people to go? People with bigger brains than myself would have to figure that one out. But what I do agree with is that you've drawn attention to a new section for the plan that we've never had before, where this council believes that it has a duty to advocate on behalf of our residents to those people who can contribute to the well-being of our residents, even if we can't directly, it's not within our gift to grant. And your point about ensuring that the bus services across the whole borough are efficient and sustainable, I would be very happy to say ensuring that the bus service across the whole borough are efficient, sustainable, and cover and deliver sufficient service to our residents. And that's what we can advocate for. I'm happy to do that. Thank you. All right. Councillor Malvaganam.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points. The main one is to actually congratulate Mr. Roberts, Mrs. Livingston and her team, who did an absolutely excellent job putting this document together. I was part of the working group which actually worked through the entire process, so well done to you all. One thing which has actually struck me yesterday, sitting at the local plan working group, something came up on it, which I mean, it's part of the aspiration part, which I was sort of advocating at our meetings. It says safeguard land for future transport provision policy. I mean, if you read the document, it's more of an aspiration, and it's in our annual plan, because there seems to be some sort of a disconnect between that local plan working group annual plan and this 5-year plan. I mean, I don't know whether it's too late, whether there's some legal niceties why we can't bring that part into here. it's something for the officers to think about, because I mean, the heading says safeguard land for future transport provision, and they're specifically talking about the Sturt Road and the link and the bridge and so on and so forth. Councillor Hawkins was at the meeting, Councillor Tapper was at the meeting. I did say that such things should not be part of the annual plan, because this report has been going back from 2016. Now it's come up to 2021 and looks like it's going to be pushed into 2026 as well. So I'm sort of suggesting the exec actually looks at that along with the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mavagan, can I just be absolutely clear on the point in the plan? Can you kind of give us the page and the point that you are referring to, please?
Yeah, this is this sort of dovetailing the local plan with the 5-year plan. For example, your local plan on Appendix 3, this yesterday's meeting, page 10, I believe, on my screen.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Margaret. You're talking about a document that came up at a meeting yesterday.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry. Right. Okay. I'm happy to take that offline with you and the officers to refer to that. Thank you for that. Okay. Any other? Councillor Edward Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. Just picking up on Councillor Tapper's point on the buses. I can't find the paragraph relating to this, but I do think it ought to say that the borough will continue to work with all partners in seeking a viable and green bus service. There are trials going on elsewhere in the county on hydrogen-driven buses, on different types, different formats of delivery in terms of bus services. And I think that I'm fighting a battle to ensure that Surrey isn't left out on any of this. And I think it'd be important that our plan emphasises that we need to be, as a borough, working with, let's say, the other boroughs and districts and the county, who are ultimately the delivery authority, in ensuring, as I say, there is a viable and green bus transport network available for residents.
Thank you. I'll make sure that that happens. Okay. Any other questions on the 5-year strategy paper? Okay. Right. Okay.
Leader, you wanted to ask.
You've come back with your live. You're in real time. Right. Okay. Let's just go back to where we were talking. Page 58. Right. Page 58.
We found the section.
Yes, so it's the last item on page 58.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was Councillor Bates.
That's right.
Okay.
So, Chairman, the rewording goes like this: deliver actions that encourage and support steps being taken by local people within the community to tackle climate change. So the council's focus is delivering actions that encourage and support that action on the ground.
Okay, so that's not a tweak. That's a throwing out of the whole section and putting that in instead. Is that right?
Yeah. So education and lifestyle would definitely form part of it, but it would provide a bigger umbrella on all the action that we can do to support the steps that local residents will want to be taking and are taking to tackle climate change. And that reflects a reality that however much the council does with its own estate, with its own services, that's important. But the bigger goal and the more challenging goal is around the borough being able to deliver a sustainable strategy for climate change.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Bates, if you heard Mr. Roberts' rewording of that section, let's see if that's adequate for you to make from your point.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that is clearer. It certainly uses clearer language and has simplified that sentence. So I congratulate Mr. Roberts on his quick delivery of his linguistic skills. So I think that is better wording and certainly clearer.
Thank you. I imagine in some other local authorities that could have taken 6 weeks and 2 committees to come up with that. Yeah. That's why we hired them. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Members, just on that one point, are we happy to adopt that different wording on that one point? Great. Okay. All right. Okay. If there are no more questions on this, then if we go back to page 5. So the executive is advised to recommend to full council that the new 5-year strategy as set out in Annex B of this report be adopted and the final amendments to the content of the strategy be delegated to the chief executive in consultation with the leader as we've just amended. Are we agreed? Okay, thank you. I think I saw Councillor Dugan up there.
Yes, he was.
Is he? Councillor Dugan?
You did, but I can't vote.
I know you're online, but I just wanted to make sure that you know, as part of the executive, if you had anything, I wasn't missing any points you wanted to make.
No, not on this paper, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. That recommendation is carried. Okay. Right, we'll go into item 6. Bids received for funding from the Local Community Improvement Fund. Councillor Perry, this is your paper.
Thank you, Chairman. In October 2020, the Council set up the Community Improvement Fund to facilitate the use of SIL funds in individual wards. It was agreed that the SIL income would be pooled to enable all wards to bid for SIL grants, even when they did not necessarily deliver new development. The first funding bid round for this financial year, 21-22, was held during June and July of this year. Information regarding the bid process was published on the Council's website only. And since this list was published, several councillors have mentioned that they were unaware of bids from their individual wards. And I've therefore asked that in future all councillors be advised of any bids received prior to any formal presentation to the executive. The next bid window will be in January.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Dugan, that's your microphone, please. Thank you.
Sorry, so the next bid window will be in January 2022. Okay, the report details the source of all SIL receipts by ward, the current balances held by each ward, and full details of the bids received and recommended for approval. We therefore, do you want me to read that? So the executive is advised to resolve that £6148 be awarded to Midget Community Association to pay for improvements to the access to the community pond and wildlife area. That £16,600 be awarded to Bentley Copse Play Area to cover the cost of the replacement of play equipment and safety surfaces. That £28,800 be awarded to Frimley Lodge Park Fitness Trail to replace fitness equipment. That £4,900 be awarded to Southcote Play Area, Southcote Park Play Area to cover the costs of replacing the safety services. And also that the application for funding of a Pelican Crossing at Ravenscote School be held in abeyance pending another decision by Surrey County Council.
Good. Thank you. Okay, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so questions for myself or Mr. Councillor Perry. Councillor Edward Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. Can I refer to 2 items, please? The first one, the Southcote Park Play Area. It quite rightly says here, well, it doesn't rightly say here, but there is no mention of the borough councillors having been consulted on this paper, which is a glaring omission. And I'll park that one. But I will say that, you know, part of the problem here is it's a positive for once on COVID and lockdown that the play area, which my fellow ward councillor Josephine Hawkins has pushed hard to get to its current state, has proved to be highly popular with local residents during lockdown 1, 2, 3, or whenever lockdown we're on. And its usage, it has a lot of use. It's a popular area. And I think that we as a council need to just look at some of this when they say there's not sufficient revenue to cover the cost. I mean, it is worn out through usage. So we need to start looking at how we are going to fund the further maintenance of these play areas. And it's not just Southcote Park. I mean, it's the one I know best, but I'm sure the same applies to every councillor across the county, across the council area. My main points, though, relate to the one on Heatherside. There are so many areas that are wrong on this paper. I'll keep it brief. Again, no mention of any councillors having been consulted. Secondly, it's in Heatherside and Parkside ward. The applicant, Ravenscote Parent Teacher Association, I think it's well known by everybody wearing my county and borough hats. I have been pushing hard for a crossing at this location. At no stage have I been contacted by a member of the PTA. The first I was aware of this when the executive papers came out. It says here they've been running a campaign. First I've heard it. And there is a conduit in place. No, there isn't. There is a raised platform in place, which I managed to get pushed through the local area committee about 2 years ago. There's talk here about they've been in contact with the county. The county and Surrey police have actually been out in the last 10 days to carry out a safety audit. It talks about a Pelican Crossing. That is wrong. And I'm slightly concerned here that this wording has gone into a flawed document, because it may not be a Pelican Crossing. And I think that it is wrong that people get fixed views on the nature of the crossing. There is going to be mention of it at the next local area committee, and whether or not we're going to progress much further, because the reports are being prepared. So, you know, no financial contributions. It is all dependent on the crossing, the nature of the crossing. And I think that this is, I urge officers to be very careful, and the portfolio holder to be very careful on putting reports through without consulting with the ward councillors, and putting forward reports that are so basically flawed. This shouldn't be parked, it should be thrown away. And then once we're in a position to know the type of crossing, to know the county views and what funding is required, then it should come forward, and not before. And it should come forward, as with all of these reports, with a councillor's support and recommendation. Thank you, Leader. Oh, by the way, I'm not happy with this report.
I hadn't gathered that from your comments, Councillor Hawkins. Thank you for clarifying at the end. I don't have to tell you, but for anyone else who's watching, of course, highways is county, and this application came in, as you say, from the Ravenscote PTA, and I think the right decision is to hold in abeyance. I think Councillor Perry made exactly the right decision to hold it off until, as you say, it was clarified exactly what was needed and what we can do to contribute. You did make a couple of points about either the quality of the paper or the information being not correct. I just wondered if Mr. Roberts would like to reply.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I think the core of what you're saying is that the report does not have the benefit of the ward councillor's perspective and knowledge and expertise. And I think that it is not acceptable for reports like this that are promoting schemes within a particular ward not to have the engagement of the ward councillor. And I think a lot of the issues that you've raised could have been resolved if that had taken place. And so I make a commitment, if a future report comes back in front of executive, that ward councillor engagement will be fully undertaken. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think, as Councillor Perry said, there is a surprising lack of input from ward members on a number of them. I'm glad to see that the earlier papers here, 1, 2, 3, do actually have support from local ward councillors, but I notice others don't. But the bottom line is this is coming from SIL and from the pooling that we actually put in about 18 months ago or so. And I think I'm right in saying that this is supposed to be member-led. And I think it's telling that a number of these papers, in fact, well, most of them have come in from Surrey Heath Borough Council. So actually in support of the grants being made. I think we're talking more about how the process can be improved rather than whether these are good applications for grants or not. Are there any other questions for Councillor Perry? Councillor Tapper, it's definitely Councillor Tapper this time.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to say how pleased I am to see the proposed project to renovate Bentley Copse play area being included. It is something that I have been angling for quite a long time. And it has the support of both myself and my two colleagues. On Heatherside, news of this has been very well received within Heatherside Ward, and I'm only hopeful that this work will go ahead sufficiently soon to ensure that the new playground will be available for use next year. And let's just hope that we have a better summer than we did this year. I am somewhat with Councillor Hawkins with regard to the Pelican Crossing, and I can also confirm his request that it be made clear that this covers two wards, both Heatherside and Parkside. It crosses Upper Chobham Road, which is actually the boundary between the two wards. So both wards need to be consulted on this one. I'm not so sure that I agree with Councillor Hawkins with regard to the issue about whether or not it should be a Pelican Crossing. I think we should aspire to it being a Pelican Crossing. It may not be so in due course, but I think we should always shoot for the highest possible implementation of safety that we possibly can. And so I'm happy to see that the issue in this particular item does state a Pelican Crossing is that aspiration. However, I'm somewhat dismayed that it is held in abeyance, awaiting a response from the Highways Authority of Surrey County Council. By past experience, I expect we will be waiting a long time. It's locally known as something of a black hole. And you'll know that there are other issues with the highways section of Surrey County Council that is causing us no end of frustration. I just hope that that doesn't happen here. Thank you, Leader.
I understand your comments. I'm certainly not going to comment. Councillor Hawkins is a far better expert on Pelican crossings and roads than I am. What I would say is that the county are spending hundreds of millions of pounds a year on roads, and they must have thousands and thousands of projects. So I do understand that it would be very, very difficult for them to give us all answers at the timing we would like it to be. I'm not a big believer in black holes and kind of giving up on it. As far as I'm concerned, this is something that we need to be lobbying for on behalf of our residents, and we'll do our best. And no doubt Councillor Hawkins, who's fighting the fight on our behalf, will continue with that. Are there any other questions on this paper or these grants? I'm not seeing any. Okay. All right. So, Councillor Perry, you read out the recommendation. The executive is advised to resolve small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Members, are we agreed? Okay, thank you. Right, item 7. Surrey County Council's draft survey transport plan 2022 consultation and our reply. Councillor Page, this is your paper.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, the Local Plan Working Group has been working on this before, but this report sets out the proposed response to Surrey County Council's consultation on the draft Surrey Transport Plan 2022 to 2032, and it's locally referred to as LTP4, Local Transport Plan 4. The draft transport plan has significant implications for existing and future transport infrastructure within Surrey Heath and sets out bold measures to tackle key transport issues, including significantly reducing carbon emissions and improving public transport. And Annex 1 of the report sets out the proposed detailed response to the consultation, which is covered by the letter. In terms of general comments, LTP4's overarching vision and objectives are welcomed and supported and aligned with our Council's 5-year strategy, some of which we've heard of just very recently in this meeting, and the objectives of our climate change action plan. However, a number of key points are noted in the response, including that the delivery of the plan's aspirations will be heavily reliant on partners, and delivery of the plan will be particularly challenging in Surrey Heath due to the local context. And by that, I mean our already mentioned, our high car dependency, our residents' dependency on the car. Specific comments are raised on the 9 policy areas and associated measures included in the plan. Common themes include the need for further detailed information on the implementation of complex measures, the need for greater emphasis on implementing improvements to cycles and public transport infrastructure in the areas of Surrey with limited coverage of those means of transport, as well as the need to ensure that high quality alternatives are in place before implementing measures related to demand management for cars. In particular, the response sets out that the council will not be able to support specific measures for demand management for Surrey Heath until genuinely reliable and accessible alternatives are in place prior to the implementation of the measures to deter and impede car usage. So in this respect, I consider the council's response should be further strengthened by the addition of the following wording into the first paragraph of the overarching general comments, and I quote, "However, we have one major concern. Public transport in Surrey Heath is poor, in particular for the villages, which forces residents to be reliant on their cars. This situation has worsened with the loss of the Aviva 34 and 35 bus services recently announced. It's imperative that the public transport situation is fully resolved before disadvantaging car use by introducing demand management for car travel." I think that's a very important addition that we should put into the paper in front of you. The behaviour change policy area is identified in the report as being critical to delivering LTP4, and it is noted that the current measures included in the plan are too vague to deliver the significant step change in behaviour in Surrey, or certainly Surrey Heath. Furthermore, the response sets out that it will be essential for the successful delivery of behavioural change measures that genuinely reliable and accessible active travel and public transport alternatives are in place prior to implementing measures to support reduced car usage. Overall, the proposed response tries to strike the balance between being supportive and we, let's be fair, we are very supportive of these ambitious proposals, particularly in the light of our carbon targets. But whilst doing that, we need to identify the valid concerns and challenges within the delivery of the plan, particularly of the diversity of our residents across living in a fairly urban area of Camberley, but also the risk to people that lives in villages that rely on public transport. So to ensure the final response is amended to reflect the additional wording I've proposed, I request that the report recommendation is amended to add delegated authority to the head of planning services in consultation with me as a portfolio holder to agree the final response wording some of which, or most of it, I've previously outlined. So that's the end of my report. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Page. Okay, just before, are the officers clear on exactly where you want to insert that into the paper?
Yes, so I've previously written to them. They have all that ready, and they're ready to go with it. And it's the wording that I read out earlier.
Okay, thank you. So members, just on that one point, are we happy for the amendment to be put in as stated? Agreed? Okay. As Councillor Page said, any questions on our response to the county? Councillor? Oh, Councillor Duggan.
Thank you, Leader. And also thank you to Councillor Page. You are both well aware that I had some concerns with the paper, and those concerns are fully alleviated by the most excellent choice of words that the portfolio holder used. So thank you to him.
Well, I'd just like to say, Councillor Dugan, thank you to you for your support and energy behind this paper. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any other questions on the reply? Okay. Good. Okay. Right. So, members, the recommendation is the executive is advised to resolve that the response set out in Annex A of this report be agreed as the Council's formal response to the Surrey County Council's consultation on the draft Surrey Transport Plan 22-20 to 2032, as amended by Councillor Page and agreed earlier. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Oh, and are we happy to delegate the authority as requested to the portfolio holder and the chief exec? Great. Right. I had a feeling you would, Councillor. Okay. Right. Item 8, there was an urgent action. Councillor Perry, you're going to take us through this one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the executive is asked to note and approve the urgent action taken under the scheme of delegation of functions to officers by the Council's 151 officer in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance. The action taken was to confirm to Surrey County Council the borough's intention to remain in the business rates pool for the period 22-23. The urgency was caused by Surrey County Council, who set a deadline for a response of October the 8th, which was only a few days after receipt of their notification. So the background to this is that the basic split of business rates is done as follows. First 50% goes to central government, 10% to county councils, and 40% come to district or borough councils. Under the current business rates retention scheme, Surrey Heath is also able to retain a proportion of the growth in business rate income generated in this area. Any growth by Surrey Heath above the basic level set by government is first subject to an extra 50% levy by central government, with the balance split in the same proportions as the basic, which would leave us with 20% of the growth achieved. By agreeing to join the pooling arrangement, it is estimated that we could receive an extra net sum equivalent to 30% of the growth achieved. This is approximately 276,000, so it's quite significant. Our consultants, LG Futures, support estimates that indicate that we will significantly benefit by being part of the pool. Whilst it all looks very attractive, there is a very small risk involved in joining the pool, in that if all the boroughs in the pool decline in the amount of rates they collect in the same year, that could result in a small back payment from us. Hasn't happened to date, and the selection of candidates for the pool was primarily based on their previous good record of collection. So it sounds a bit weird, but the pooling concept was apparently allowed by the government as it's trying to encourage closer working arrangements between the authorities. That's the background to it. The pool we are part of consists of Surrey County Council, ourselves, Runnymede, Mole Valley, Woking, Elmsbridge and Sutton. And Surrey County Council believes this is the best grouping in the county to benefit from the pooling conversation. So the executive is asked to approve the urgent action taken under the scheme of delegation of functions to officers.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Now, as chair of P&F, Councillor Malvaginam, of course, has to sign that off. I just wanted to give him an opportunity if he wanted to comment. Councillor Malvaginam, I know I'm putting you on. I know you didn't put your hand up, but I just want to make sure if you are happy with the urgent action.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I am happy. That's the very reason I signed it, because there is a benefit for the council. So it's a right way to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the urgent action, members? Okay. So this item is, we're asked just to note the urgent action, which I guess we have duly noted. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. All right, item 9, write-off of irrecoverable bad debts. Councillor Perry, this is you again.
Yeah, me again, I'm afraid. Just start by saying that our revenue team have consistently kept their place in the top 10 performing local authorities in terms of tax collection. For the year 2021, business rates collection totaled 99.8%, which put them in the first place nationally for council tax, and 98.7% was collected, which puts them in the top 6 nationally for council tax. This represented a collection of 19.6 million in business rates and 77.3 million in council tax. Despite this excellent performance, the borough has accumulated a number of debts which are now considered to be unrecoverable. Action needs to be taken to write off these balances in order to maintain a strong balance sheet for the borough. A full schedule of all the debts concerned is attached to the report.
Thank you. Okay.
Question?
I just think that bears repeating. So we're number 1 in the country for the percentage of council tax collected.
For business rates.
For business rates, and we are 6th in the country
for council tax
collection.
For
council tax collection,
which is pretty good, I think.
I feel a press release
coming. Well, I think it begs the question: what's gone wrong with 6th place? You know, what do we have to do to move up? Well, the officers are to be absolutely commended on that. That's really, really well done.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Okay, and any questions? Councillor Bates, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, unfortunately, the question I want to ask is in the yellow papers. So can I ask that when we go into exempt that I get the opportunity to raise a question then?
I certainly will, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions on this paper? Okay. Councillor Bates, can I just ask your question, do you think it will in any way affect the recommendation? Is it? No. Are you asking for information? Or
yes. No, it doesn't impact on the recommendation.
It doesn't impact on the recommendation. No, okay, because I would be prepared to postpone that to part 2 if it did. Okay.
No, I don't have a problem with the recommendation. Thank you for asking, though, but it is to inquire about one of the matters on here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, there's no other questions, members. The recommendation is we're asked to resolve that bad debts totaling 39,628.30 in respect of council tax, 103,906.18 respect of non-domestic rates, and 17,905.80 in respect of sundry debts be approved for write-off. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. Okay. So we move to item 10, which is the exclusion of press and public. So thank you, members of the public, for joining us. We will be